the research center Les Afriques dans le Monde, and next Delphine will talk about the library in general. Thank you.
No, thank you, Magali. No, I just wanted to welcome all of you for coming here, even if you didn't come physically. So we are very glad to have this event today here. So thank you to Magali and the team to have organized this event today. So you know, at the end of the 50s, a research center has been founded here in Sciences Po Bordeaux, dedicated to African studies. And since this time, we have been accumulated research, of course, disciplines, objects, and this, of course, have been visible in the library. We have a very rich library we have here in Sciences Po dedicated to African studies. So it is an important part of our attractivity of the center here. We have so many researchers, students coming, particularly from the continent, from the African continent, to study here, to use these collections of in our libraries. So it's a very important object that you're going to discuss today. We have also this issue of the digital access to these productions, particularly this issue of open access. And here Bastien is doing a lot of initiatives, bringing here in our units. So it's a very important topic, particularly for the CNRS, for our chiefs from the National Center of Scientific Research. So all these topics are very, very important for our attractivity. And the last point I wanted to mention is this European basis of this dialogue we are having today. This unit has been, in fact, involved from the beginning in the foundation of the AGES network and research on African studies. So it's an old commitment here to be involved in European discussions on African studies. So to see this expansion of this dialogue in the area, professional area of collections, of libraries, academic libraries, it's of course a very good thing for us. So I wanted to mention that. I would like to apologize. I will not be able to stay this today with you, and particularly this morning we have a board at Sciences Po board meeting. So I'm not sure it will be more interesting than what we're going to discuss here, but I had to be there. So please apologize for that, and have a very good discussions, I hope, and we will see you later on. We will meet later for the lunch. Thank you for your invitations. So thank you again, and have a very good discussions. Thank you.
Thank you, David.
So hi everyone. Sorry again for being late this morning. Like David, I won't be able to stay for the whole day, so my apologies. But I will join you for lunch, and it will be really a great pleasure. I'm very, very pleased and honored to have you all today in Bordeaux. Thank you to Magali and Marie-Hélène who have organized this day, and Jan, of course. Sorry. So I'll try to introduce you to Sciences Po Bordeaux Library in a few words. Sorry for my bad English. We do not practice English very much in France. That's why we don't speak English very well, as you know. So I'll share a slide with everybody, if I can. Okay. Dans les commentaires, ils n'étaient pas censés être visibles. Ok, il faut que je passe en mode. C'est bon, Anna. Voilà. Is it okay for our colleagues? Okay, thank you. So, to begin with, welcome in Bordeaux. As I said, say it again. I'll try to begin with to introduce you to Sciences Po network in France. Sciences Po is a brand name for our institutions, which are called Institut d'études politiques, which means Political Studies Institutes. It's easy to translate. There are 10 Sciences Po in France, The main one, of course, is in Paris. It's a very big one with a very big library with a big staff of around 150 members. But all the other Sciences Po in France are very small, like Bordeaux, smaller than Paris one, like Sciences Po Bordeaux. And we all have two missions, like universities in France, academic studies and academic research. So I'll focus now on Sciences Po Bordeaux. In Sciences Po Bordeaux, we have 2,500 students. So it's small, but big enough to have real subjects regarding studies for our students. They all have 5 years studies with a master degree at the end of their studies. When they finish their studies, our students, most of them work in public administrations. They are managers and project leaders for most of them. And Sciences Po Bordeaux also have, of course, 2 research units. The first one is the LAM, which David has introduced just before, dedicated to African studies. And the second one is the Centre Émile Durkheim, the Émile Durkheim Center, dedicated to political science and comparative sociology. Our library team is composed with 13 members, and we are organized in 2 big services, one for students and one for researchers. So for the LAM specifically, there are 2 colleagues only, Magali and Marie-Hélène. And we also have shared services for both publics regarding the catalog, the quality of the catalog, electronic resources, which are bought for all the library and also for the research units, the IT, and hygiene and safety. Now a bit of teasing, because you will have a visit of the library later with Magali and Marie-Hélène, but I'll just tell you a few words about our reading rooms. So the library is 1,400 square meters with 320 seats, and it is distributed, sorry for my English, on 2 floors, a ground floor with 2 reading rooms dedicated to students, on the first floor for researchers with 1 reading room. On the ground floor, we also propose copy services, self-service loan machines, a press corner, and the sleeping corner, because our students are very often very tired and they really appreciate this place. You will see later with Magali and Marie-Hélène. On the first floor, so you find the reading room for researchers, and also a collaborative space with a classroom and 4 group study rooms for the students. Our collections are also stocked in stacks. So we have 7 kilometers of collections in stacks. So it's a big stock. So we have 4 stacks designated by their color. So a yellow stack, the blue stack, the gray stack, and the pink stack. And the pink one is dedicated to research collections. A few key figures regarding our collections, so you can have an idea of the volume of our collections. The print collections are 100,000 books, and I indicated on the right the part of LAM collections. And as you see, we have many electronic collections, like everywhere, I think. They are taking a bigger and bigger place every year. And to finish with, I introduce you to our catalog, Babor Plus, which is based on Primo Discovery Tool, edited by Ex Libris. And the specificity of our catalog is that it's shared with all Bordeaux universities around. So it means that our students can find collections located here in Sciences Po Bordeaux library, but also in all the library of the different campuses here in Bordeaux in the same catalog. And it's really very interesting and precious. They don't have to have a different card, library card in each library. It's the same card for all the libraries, so they can circulate all over. And it also means that we have a great community of librarians here in Bordeaux, because we share the same tools. So we also have common subjects and objects to discuss regarding our practices and skills. It was really a brief survey. Sorry, it's really very, very brief, but I have to go to the same boring meeting as David now, so I have to leave you. Do you have any questions before I leave you? Thank you. So I let Magali take
Thank you, Delphine.
The lead.
Hello, everyone. I will speak in French, but I have a PowerPoint in English because my English is very bad. Excuse me. Il est où le micro? Alors, je vais vous parler de la BINA, Bibliothèque numérique aréale de la BULAC, à travers les collections de manuscrits africains que nous possédons dans notre bibliothèque. Alors, un petit sommaire. Donc, je vous présenterai rapidement les collections africaines manuscrites de la BULAC, le pourquoi de la création de cette bibliothèque numérique, la BINA elle-même et Numaop, qui est une plateforme de gestion de contenu numérisé, qui est le pendant de notre BINA. Voilà. Alors, ces collections donc, de manuscrits africains sont en fait compris dans le très grand ensemble de collections de manuscrits arabes que nous avons à la BULAC, qui est une collection importante puisqu'elle est la deuxième de France derrière celle de la Bibliothèque nationale de France, puisque nous possédons plus de 2400 pièces, dont plus aussi d'un millier de fragments. Il faut voir que ces collections arabes et africaines donc, ont été constituées à partir des années 1750 en lien avec l'école des jeunes de langue qui deviendra plus tard l'école des langues orientales, actuelle INALCO, Institut national des langues et civilisations orientales, qui s'est implantée à Istanbul dès cette époque-là et qui a collecté des documents dans les 3 grandes langues de l'Empire ottoman de l'époque, c'est-à-dire en arabe, en persan et en turc. Ce qui explique que notre collection africaine est constituée en très grande partie de documents qui proviennent du Maghreb, mais aussi de documents en berbère ou encore de documents qu'on va appeler proprement africains, enfin d'Afrique subsaharienne, soit en arabe, soit en langues africaines, en écriture ajami. Voilà. Deuxième grande période d'enrichissement de ces collections, à partir de 1872, c'est l'époque où la bibliothèque et l'école vont s'implanter uniquement à Paris et vont quitter Istanbul. Et cela correspond aussi à la période où la bibliothèque s'enrichit très fortement à la fois d'imprimés mais aussi de manuscrits. Dans les dernières décennies du 19e siècle, à cela, plusieurs explications, plusieurs causes, on va dire. C'est la conquête et la colonisation de l'Algérie, durant laquelle le Maghreb va devenir un nouveau terrain d'étude, à la fois sur le plan linguistique, mais aussi sur le plan de la recherche en islamologie notamment. C'est l'effort aussi qui va être déployé par certains enseignants pour développer des réseaux d'achat directement sur place, des réseaux d'achat de manuscrits sur le secteur, comme ça a été le cas par exemple par Soliman Al-Ahri, dont nous possédons aussi la bibliothèque personnelle qui a été achetée donc en 1877. La deuxième raison, elle est liée aussi aux soulèvements qui ont eu lieu, aux insurrections en Algérie qui ont eu lieu en 1871, où là aussi la bibliothèque va recevoir la collection du Cheikh Haddad, qui est le leader de la révolte kabyle en Kabylie. Et c'est à cette occasion que nous allons recevoir une centaine de manuscrits via le général Gaston de Galifet. La troisième raison s'explique par la colonisation de l'Afrique subsaharienne à proprement parler, et particulièrement de l'Afrique occidentale, où là aussi, vous avez des enseignants qui vont s'appuyer sur les textes de l'islam africain, notamment pour leurs cours d'arabe, comme Octave Oudas. Il faut voir que ces manuscrits ont servi de support d'enseignement, en fait, à l'école, pendant toutes ces années-là, avant de devenir des objets de recherche. Voilà. Enfin, dernière grande période d'enrichissement de notre collection, en 2016, nous avons fait l'acquisition, nous avons acheté une collection de plus de 100 pièces, essentiellement en arabe et essentiellement en provenance du Maghreb, à la famille Saïd Güttner, qui est une famille d'éditeurs et collectionneurs orientalistes. Et je vous ai montré un de nos trésors qui est un manuscrit berbère, qui est une copie d'époque médiévale pardon, d'un texte tibatite. Alors, pourquoi avoir créé cette bibliothèque numérique? Donc, l'idée, c'était de créer une bibliothèque numérique de référence pour mettre en valeur justement ces collections de manuscrits qui étaient totalement méconnues par les chercheurs, mais aussi par le grand public. Pourquoi? Parce que ce sont des collections qui ont été partiellement inventoriées, partiellement, et qui n'avaient jamais été cataloguées. Donc, il a fallu commencer par effectuer donc, le signalement, puis la numérisation de ces pièces. Donc, il faut voir qu'on a commencé le signalement par les manuscrits perses et turco-ottomans avant de s'atteler aux collections arabes, à partir de 2015 et du recrutement d'une collègue chez nous, spécialiste de codicologie arabe. Voilà. Alors, dans quel outil catalogue-t-on? Dans l'outil Calam, qui est le catalogue collectif de l'enseignement supérieur pour les archives et les manuscrits. Donc, c'est un format XML EAD. Nous cataloguons en biécriture, c'est-à-dire à la fois avec les caractères originaux et la transcription, translittération en latin. Et nous sommes la première bibliothèque à avoir catalogué de cette sorte dans le catalogue Calam. Voilà. Et je pense qu'on n'est toujours pas très nombreux à le faire. Et actuellement, c'est quand même 31% de ces collections arabes qui sont cataloguées dans Calam, dont une grosse partie, effectivement, de nos collections africaines, qui représentent à peu près 842 manuscrits. Donc, on est encore loin d'avoir tout traité sur les 2400 pièces. Donc, voilà à quoi ressemble le catalogue Calam. Je ne sais pas si je peux zoomer, en fait. Non, voilà. C'est pour vous montrer, ici, vous avez donc la biécriture avec les caractères arabes, ici, donc, la translittération, et partout où c'est possible, ma collègue, effectivement, donc, insère des éléments en arabe et en translittération dans la notice descriptive codicologique. Voilà. Alors, la numérisation. On a eu une chance énorme, c'est d'être financé par la région Île-de-France sur 5 ans, entre 2016 et 2020, ce qui nous a permis de numériser la quasi-totalité de nos manuscrits turco-ottomans et persans, et pour l'instant, 12% de nos collections de manuscrits arabes, 304 manuscrits à l'heure actuelle dans la BINA, donc. Ça s'est fait en 3 campagnes pour l'instant, qui ont eu lieu entre 2018 et 2020. Pas de campagne l'année dernière, malheureusement, mais une campagne cette année qui devrait débuter en septembre prochain sur les collections donc, de manuscrits arabes, toujours. Et donc, nous travaillons avec la grosse société actuellement présente en France qui s'appelle Azantis et qui s'installe dans nos locaux pour les périodes, effectivement, donc, de numérisation. Alors, cette bine, je vais vous la montrer. Ça marche pas. Mais si ça marche pas, c'est pas grave.
Ça marche.
Je fais juste à l'eau, d'accord.
Oui. Mais après, normalement, il va falloir que tu... Voilà. Là, on fait arrêter et on va repartager le navigateur.
Trop compliqué.
Pas de trop, t'inquiète pas. Voilà.
Voilà. Alors, voilà à quoi ressemble la BINA. Vous avez une page d'accueil sur laquelle on met en avant certaines collections pour les valoriser. Vous avez une possibilité de recherche ici, qui est une recherche assez simple, hein, avec des mots-clés, des mots du titre, des noms d'auteurs, etc. Vous avez aussi la possibilité de rechercher par thème. L'intérêt de rechercher par thème, c'est que ma collègue inscrit dans les notices descriptives des mots-clés qui permettent de rebondir dans le catalogue. Et si, par exemple, je vais sur Ajami, voilà, vous tombez sur un des ouvrages, un des manuscrits, pardon, africains numérisés chez nous. Voilà. C'est un manuscrit en Peul. Vous avez la possibilité aussi de rechercher par index, auteur, langue, type de document ou cote. Voilà. Lorsque vous êtes sur les notices, vous avez en fait les informations qui proviennent de Calam, avec là aussi la mention du titre, des langues d'écriture. Ça, c'est la description codicologique du document et de ses composantes, s'il y en a. Et ensuite, vous avez le contenu qui, lui, décrit très exactement les différentes composantes, le contenu intellectuel du document. Voilà à quoi ça ressemble. Voilà, avec la possibilité de zoomer, etc. Et de faire des copies donc gratuites. Du coup, je voudrais bien retourner sur mon PowerPoint. Alors attends, je fais
le partage.
Donc je fais arrêter.
Voilà.
Ok,
Là,
donc je fais reprends.
Voilà, tu refais écran partagé. Clac.
Ok,
et tu reprends,
il
est
là.
Voilà.
Ok, d'accord. Ok. Voilà. Alors, NumaHop, c'est une plateforme qui a été créée sensiblement à la même période que la BINA, qui nous a permis de gérer des contenus de numérisation, des contenus numérisés, pardon. Et cette plateforme, elle a été créée à l'origine par 3 bibliothèques, la bibliothèque Sainte-Geneviève, la bibliothèque de Sciences Po Paris et la BULAC. Il y a désormais beaucoup d'autres bibliothèques françaises qui ont adhéré à NumaHop. Elle permet de développer donc une chaîne unique, simplifiée et automatisée pour gérer l'ensemble des contenus numérisés. L'avantage donc, c'est de privilégier l'usage d'un format standardisé, normalisé. C'est de favoriser aussi la standardisation justement des méthodes de travail également. Et c'est de mutualiser et d'échanger les savoir-faire entre les différents utilisateurs de NumaHop. Le grand avantage, c'est que cela nous permet une diffusion automatisée des documents numérisés vers d'autres bibliothèques numériques, comme par exemple Gallica, qui est la bibliothèque numérique de la Bibliothèque nationale de France, ou vers d'autres plateformes externes, comme par exemple Internet Archive, qui est venu moissonner donc Et
arrêter le partage.
ouais.
Ouais.
Et je recommence.
Voilà.
Écran partagé, je vais y arriver.
Je vais sur Firefox.
Ah merde.
Ah.
Attends, j'y suis plus. Option partage avancé.
Non, directement sur la flèche verte.
Ah
voilà.
d'accord. Je suis pas douée.
Et
voilà. Voilà. Et c'est comme ça donc que donc là vous êtes sur la plateforme d'Internet Archive. Vous avez accès aux collections donc qui ont été moissonnées à partir de NumaHop. Voilà. Et voilà, j'en ai fini. C'était juste pour vous montrer d'autres collections. Je crois que j'ai fait des photos après, mais bon. Donc je fais, non, je fais pas fin.
Flèche verte.
Hop, et mon document. Et voilà, il est là. Voilà. Donc c'était pour vous montrer ces fameux manuscrits africains sur lesquels ma collègue travaille. Voilà, c'était juste pour vous donner un avant-goût si vous voulez venir explorer ces collections-là. Voilà, et j'ai fini. Si vous avez des questions. Merci à tous.
Do somebody have questions? Colleagues online? Sophia?
Thank you. I'm sorry, my French is not good enough, so I have to ask you.
My English is very
Thanks a lot. I was wondering what kind of connections, or do you have any connections to the countries where these manuscripts come from? To work together, let them know that everything is digitized?
No, we didn't work with African countries, but we try to work with researcher to identify the language, the African language, because my colleague is codicologue in Arabic language, and she can read, but not not understand. Yes. Comment? Ouais, exactement. But we don't have any connection with African country for our manuscript. No, we have a lot of We have researcher and student too, and teacher in the INALCO, the university. The School of Oriental and African Studies in France. It's like the SOAS. This is the same thing, and we can exchange with this teacher to try to have more information of the African language from our manuscript. Excuse me for my bad English.
But I think it's such great resources. I think there should be some way of sharing it, especially with the places where these manuscripts are from.
Yes, but comment dire? En fait, ça fait it's only from 6 years we have a specialist from codicology. And before we have no specialist to work on this subject. Yes, we are in the beginning.
Great, thank you.
Simple, est-ce qu'on peut toujours consulter les manuscrits originaux ou est-ce que leur numérisation fait qu'on est...
Alors, on essaye. Alors, la numérisation, c'était aussi avait aussi cette vocation-là, c'est-à-dire d'éviter de sortir les pièces. Mais elles sont toujours consultables, bien sûr. Elles sont toujours consultables. Oui, oui, à la réserve. On a une salle dédiée à la consultation des manuscrits et des archives.
Est-ce que, Magali, quand on parle en français, est-ce qu'on traduit peut-être?
Ah oui, pardon.
Si vous
J'arrive
voulez.
difficilement à m'exprimer. Donc...
Translate briefly my question and the answer. So I just ask, since they're digitized, is it still possible to look at the original documents? And so Marin said, it's still possible only in a special room in the library, but it's also a way of protecting them to have them digitized.
Hi to everyone. Okay, I just have to do some technical things. I'm sorry for my presentation. It's not so cured. Anyway, I hope you can enjoy it. Do you see it?
Yeah.
Okay. Today I'm here to talk about the library we are managing by the 2017. As I said before, this library has been embedded in the National Library of Rome because the former institute that was opened and had this library closed in 2011. So all the funds and the materials were placed in the National Library of Rome, and nobody was managing them. So in 2017 started a project from the Ministry of the Research and University of Italy for giving for reopening the library and giving valorization and to this material that is historically really important. So I'm here to talk you about this project and later in particular about the African section that is really interesting as its past is in the colonial institution of Italy. So this library, the ISMEO library, was the library of the Istituto Italiano per l'Africa e l'Oriente, that is the Italian Institute for Africa and the Orient, that was born in 1995 and died in 2011. It was a fusion of two institutions, the Istituto Italiano per il Medio Estremo Oriente, that means an Italian Institute for the Middle East and the Orient, and the Istituto Italo-Africano, that was an Italian African Institute. These two institutions were very deep in the history. The first one was born in the 1906 with a name that is a revelation for its history, because the name is Istituto Coloniale. It was an institution created by an Italian lobby whose aim was create an Italian culture for colonies. Later I will talk about the history of this section. And the second was born in the 1933 and was an association of Orientalists. So the library is a collection, more or less, of the donations by these Orientalists. Like, for example, Giuseppe Tucci, who was one of the important Orientalists in Italy, and also Taddei was an historian of India, and so on. So this library closed in the 2011 because it was under the Ministry of the Foreign Affairs, and the ministry didn't give money anyway to manage it. So it closed. And when we arrived here in the National Library as an association, a new association called Associazione Internazionale di Studi sul Mediterraneo e l'Oriente, as librarians, we started to do it by scratch, by nothing. There was only a big room and a mountain of books, more or less. Now we are, and so we didn't have so much documentation because the archives of the library were placed in another place and are not is not possible to reach them because they are at the Ministry of the Foreign Affairs, and they are closed in boxes, so it's impossible to look at them and to see if there's something about the history of this library that we can reach. So after 2 years of building and research, we opened in the 2019, and now you can come to us and reach the books of the collections. And what about the contents of this library? This is very interesting. As I've said, the Istituto Italo-Africano was born as Istituto Coloniale, that is a colonial institute. So that the first contents were about the colonial space in Italy and the colonial space, which at the period was not only Africa, because Italy had later had only African colonies. But in the 1906, Italy, the Italians imagined a colonial space very big, also in the Americas and so on. So the first part, the first layer of this library is collected books and materials and documents from all the world. Then later, when Italy had its colonies, the library specialized in the and during the fascism, it became the colonial fascist institute, as the fascists normally do. They just put fascist on everything, so they think they have changed anyway. So by this period, the focus of the library was on Africa in particular. Later, when the fascists understood that the only places where they had the empire was only Africa and not also Arabia, because they had some look also to the Arabian Peninsula. They called it this institute Istituto Fascista dell'Africa Italiana, Italian Africa Fascist Institute. Okay, but and later, after the war, after the defeat of the fascists, this institute changed its name in 2 times: Istituto Italiano per l'Africa, Italian Institute for Africa, and Italian African Institute. Then there was the fusion, and here there's a very important event in the 1956. The Istituto Italiano per l'Africa received all the documentation coming from the former ministries of the colonies. There was the first was the Ministry of Colonies, and later the Ministry of the Italian Africa. the institute received all the documentation. So all the documents and photographs and also the material from the Colonial Museum. Among this material, there was also the library of the African Museum. That was an institution, a propaganda institute for giving the Italians the idea of a Italian colony, and inside the African Museum there was a library, and so this library was given to the Istituto Italiano per l'Africa. This is a really this is a very important moment in the history of this library, because the books that arrived were many more than the books the library had before. This is why many of these books stayed in the magazines for decades, and nobody touched them. So when we arrived here, we tried to reconstruct the history of these collections, because we found that together with this library, the memories of the colonies were cancelled, more or less, or places in the magazines. So we opened the library. We set the digital catalog and so on, and we did some other projects. But one of the main projects was the historical reconstruction of the library, and we found that with particularly focus regarding the Ministry of Foreign Affairs libraries and the Ministry of Colonies libraries. So we found that the first nucleus of the colonial library has been done in the 1819 to 1906 in the colonial office. Now I'm trying to let you. Okay. This was an office for the colonial affairs that was inside the Ministry of the Foreign Affairs, and this office had a library that it was useful for managing the questions regarding the colonies that at the time were not so big. So the library also was not so big. Later, the colonies became bigger. So inside the Ministry of the Foreign Affairs was born a general central direction of the colonial affairs from 96 to 1912. During this period, in the 1911, Italy organized an international fair that was normal in that period for showing the products from the colonies, from outside. In that occasion, this colonial affairs central direction tried to collect all the Italian bibliography regarding the Italian colonies in Italian. So it was a work that is documented. There's an article regarding this work, and for this a little library of Italian publication on colonies were born. But this material was captured and placed in the new libraries that were born later. So all these books that were more or less 1,500 were diluted in the bigger collection. So one of the works we did was to find the books of the Biblioteca dell'Ufficio Coloniale and the Raccolta delle Pubblicazioni Coloniali Italiane, and we gave them a place in the history. So now I'm trying to let you see the photographs. Just a minute. Okay, this is a publication that was done in the 1911 regarding the Italian colonial publication, and this is the organization of the ministry, and these are the first book of the Ufficio Coloniale. As you can see, you see them.
Yes.
Ah, okay. As you can see, you find here the label with Ufficio Coloniale. That these are diplomatic documents, and this is in particular about Tunisia and Tunisia. But we have more or less 200 books coming from this office. Okay. Then we entered the library, and it's more or less 200,000 books, and we just like mouses when we went through the library to find the books of this Italian collection of colonial studies, and we found also all the books, and we arranged them in the room, in the main room where we host our users. So to show what's the origin of this library. This is the other, and I have other. Okay. You can see they have also the same cover because it was intended for the fair. So they went to the touring fair to show the library like I don't know, something to show. It was very particular situation. Books that are in a fair for like a museum, and this is the particularity of this collection. Then wait a minute. Okay. This is a book coming from the museum, a colonial museum. As you can see, the stamp is Museo Coloniale, and that's the number of the inventory number. So we reconstructed all these old libraries using these stamps. This is the stamp of the Direzione Centrale degli Affari Coloniali, the office of the ministry that we talk about. And through the stamps, we succeed to reconstruct the structure of the old libraries. So, just a minute. Okay, later, the ministry of these two libraries were given to the Ministry of the Colonies that was born in 1912 and died in the 1937. It became the Ministry of Italian Africa that died in the 1953, and in the 1956, this material went to the Colonial Institute that it was called Italian Institute for Africa. And so we have the next work to do is to trace the documents that were collected by the only by the bibliothèque, the library of the Ministry of the Colonies, and then the library of the Ministry of the Italian Africa. It's a very hard job in some way, but we think it's important for researchers and historians to have a look to the old collection, to the historical collection, to give the idea of the knowledge the Italian colonialists had in the when they were working in the colonies. Okay, this is the last thing I want to show you. This is the catalog of the National Library of Rome, Central National Library of Rome. You can search by provenance, by possession. You can ask for Direzione Centrale degli Affari Coloniali, and you will find all the books and the documents. There are also cartographies, maps that we are starting to catalog. Now they are 1,595 documents, but we are trying to implement the catalog, and we are implementing the catalog when we found new books that belong to the different collections. And the same work we are doing the same work for the library of the colonial ministry of the colonial museum. That is very interesting because it's entirely propaganda library, because the colonial museum was not a scientific institution. It was a propagandistic institution. So the books that you can find them there are about how the great Italians can conquer the entire Africa, or can give civilization to the Africans, and so on. We believe that studying this collection in as a whole, we studying this collection is important to the historians, and we have some feedback regarding this, because we have researchers who are coming to study directly on those particular collections. So I finished my presentation. Thank you very much. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Thank you, Lorenzo. Do some colleagues have some questions in the room or online? Eve.
Yeah, thank you, Lorenzo, for this presentation. The history of your collection is quite complex. It reminds me the history of my own center, because it's linked to the colonization. I only had one question. I think there are like national colonial archives in Italy, as in France. What are your links with these archives? Because your collection seems very related to the colonial history.
Yes, we are working on it, because the Italians, when they left the colonies, they tried to cover all the material in over a mountain of papers, and they just mixed up documents coming from the colonies or documents from the ministries, and so the Ministry of the Colonies and the Italian Africa closed, and all the documents went to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. But in the decades, some not archivists tried to organize the archives. So they tried an organization, but they failed. So now that the material is really in a I'm sorry, no, in a mess. It's a very difficult to reconstruct. There are some inventories, but they are not so clear. So just yesterday, I was at the Foreign Affairs to talk with the archivists there to ask for example, the archives of these institutes of the colonial institutes that is now at the Ministry of the Foreign Affairs, but it's as I said, in boxes. It's impossible to access them. We are trying to contact the responsible to do some conventions or something to work on these materials, because there are so many connections, and as there are many connections with the Colonial Museum that now went to the new Civilization Museum of Rome. So we have all the materials that were together in one institution now are in 3 different institutions. I know Leiden was really different, and so more useful to have all the libraries and documents of the colonial institution all together in the same place. We are conscious of this. We are trying to do it, and the best idea is to do something virtual, collect all the documentation regarding this colonial past online, because it's impossible to get the space to collect all the places, and also the people to work on these materials.
Well, again, now we are listening to Elvire from the Archives nationales d'Outre-mer. Please, Eve, the floor is yours.
Thanks. Hi, everybody. So today I will introduce you the archives of the Côte Française des Somalies, which is globally the actual Republic of Djibouti. So as I told earlier, I'm not a librarian, so I'm really happy to be here with you. My idea was to introduce to you this collection of archives, because it's, oops, sorry, I don't know what happened. Je sais pas ce qui s'est passé. So I'm not familiar with the logistical. So my idea was to introduce you this fund, because it's a collection which was given to the Archives nationales d'Outre-mer in 2 times, in 1968 and in 1980, sorry. And until today, it was quite difficult to reach it in our reading room. So I spent a couple of years working on it, and now it will be available to the public like in a few weeks, I hope. So it's kind of breaking news. So the story of this fund is really linked to the story of the French possession in Africa. So for the people who don't know, the archives, des Archives nationales d'Outre-mer, so the national archives of Outre-mer, I don't know how to translate it. Our center is the history of our center is linked to the history of decolonization. So the collection we have come to France in several periods. And the center was created in 1966 in the heart of the decolonization period. It was thought in the first time to send the documents to Paris, but the archives were full. So after a moment, it was decided to create a center in south of France because most of the documents were arriving by Marseille, by the port. So we are in Aix-en-Provence because at the moment there was a University of Aix-en-Provence, which was built. And so the idea was to create a center of archives very, very near from the university. And there was at the moment lessons about colonial history. So it sounded quite relevant to be there. So the territory of the Côte Française des Somalies, which became after the Territoire Français des Affaires et des Issa, and then the Republic of Djibouti, is really interesting because it's one of the territory which was decolonized on the most recent date, because the decolonization is occurred in 1977, so it's quite young. And what's interesting is I'm working on a collection which is very special because the territory was not appreciated by people who were supposed to work there compared to other colonies, like, for example, I don't know, Algeria, which was always presented as a promised land with lots of opportunities and etc. Djibouti is, as it was said in this notice from the colonial exhibition of 1931 in Paris, une fournaise ardente et éblouissante. So a kind of inferno, if I can translate it. And it's really interesting because the notice was supposed to present the colony to the people at the colonial exhibition. So it's kind of a promoting document. And we see, even with the best effort, that it was really a very, very hard territory. It was really, how can I say, the climate was very, very hard, and lots of French people who wanted to go and work there couldn't support it, and they had to come back to France very, very soon. So this is approximately the territory of Côte Française des Somalies. So I don't know if you can see my, yes, you can see the mouse. So here it's Djibouti, and here it's Obok. The first place, the first French place was in Obok at the end of the 19th century. And then after a couple of years, they decided to develop the Djibouti side because it was more convenient, mostly for the boats to come there and to create a very big port. So what's interesting on this card, which has no date, but we suppose it was made at the beginning of the 20th century. What's interesting is that you see it's a small territory. It's only 23,000 square kilometers. So for a colony, it's really, really small. It's a point on a card. And at the first glance, we see it was a strategic point only to open on the Indian Ocean, sorry, and to open on the center of Africa. It was also a military strategic point. And as we all know, French still have a military strategic point there. So we are on the same line. And what is interesting too, it's a very, very small territory, but it has 800 kilometers of coast. So we really see what the interest was. And last point about this document is you see the main tribe's name, and you can read Afar and Issa, which were the two main tribes, which will give the former name of Territoire Français des Afar et des Issa, which is a first step to independence to promote the local tribes in the name. So these are cards. I won't comment. It's just to show you at the beginning of the French possession, you only see Obok written on the card in the 1880s. then at the end of the 19th century, you see Djibouti, also region. And you see it was a separation between Italian Somalia, between Ethiopia, between Britannic Somalia. And you see that the French possession is really, really a little point. And during the 20th century, how can I try to, during the 20th century, you can see separation, and you still have Côte Française des Somalies. And then during the decolonization, the first name of the territory between 1968 and 1977 is Territoire Français des Affaires et des Issa, TFAI. And then in 1977, it becomes Republic of Djibouti. So about the constitution and repatriation of the archives in France. It's really brief for you to know, because it's really linked to the colonial history. So what we can know about the document is apparently there was no national archive service. It's quite often in the colonial territory. I mean, there was no archive service constituted, I mean, nationally. The archives were kept in several services and buildings. So it's a complexity for us, because the decolonization processes is for Côte Française des Somalies is long, is 10 years. So they have time, but in a way, when it's all over the territory and in several buildings and etc., we know that some documents obviously were lost. We also know the documents prior to the 1950s were very, very often destroyed because of conservation issues. And we also know the archives were mixed in documentation folders. So it's really, really complex for us, because we have to respect one principle in archive. It's the producer logic. And if we don't understand this logic, it's quite hard to render it in the organization. So this is what I was telling you about the chronology. So there was a first referendum following the visit of General de Gaulle in 1967, and the territory decided to remain linked to France, becoming the TFAI, donc Territoire Français des Affaires et des Issa, for a couple of years. It was like a process to independence. So there was a first mission of a French archivist, who was called Marie-Antoinette Meunier, who went there and helped people over there to try to order the documents and to decide what will be kept on the territory and what will come to France. It's a kind of chance, because in most of the former colonial territory, there was no time for a mission or for a reflection about things. It was, we take what we can. And the global idea was, if it's linked to sovereignty, to really the French history or the French ministries, it comes back to France. If it's linked to the day-to-day gestion of the territory, like urbanism or nationality, it stays there because it's useful for the people globally. But in some conditions, for example, in Algeria, it was such a mess during the independence process that there was no time to send someone and to talk and etc. So the first transfer of the archives was mostly government archives. And after the second referendum in 1977, there was the independence of the territory. There was a mission of an archivist in 1979, and in 1980, the last transfer of archives. And recently, we had a transfer from the former French Ministry of Colony. Hence my question to Lorenzo earlier, because we have the luck in the Archives nationales d'Outre-mer to combine together documents about the same territory. So that's really interesting for us. So these are documents from the Service Archive, just to show you that we are really organized. We also keep archives from our own work. So these are documents about the mission of the archivist. So why am I showing you those documents too? It's we are in the middle of a very, very big process of former territory asking documents back, like for the work of arts, for example. And it's really important for us to have proof that the sharing of the documents was really something official. For example, the mission of Mrs. Rabu in 1979, she met at the moment the first president of the Djibouti Republic, and she dealt directly with him. So if today they say, but you took this document, they're ours, we're able to say, okay, let's talk. It's not me, it's the Quai d'Orsay in France. But we have documents to say, come on, there was a discussion, there was an official mission of the people, the documents were separated, there was an agreement. So these documents are really important for us. It's not that we want to keep absolutely the documents. If tomorrow, if the French president say, you give all the documents back to the former territory, we do it. But we have a history and we have elements to build an argumentation. This is really important for us. What can I say about the collection today? So it's 130 linear meters. The documents cover globally 1 century. It's about 8,000 boxes. And I'm working at the moment to decide which document will be available to consultation. I say decide, it's not my decision, it's a way of applying the law, but for some documents it's quite difficult because I don't know if you heard about, but we have lots of reflection about the, how can I say it in English, about the secret documents, because the secret défense, for example, is a protection kept by the Ministry of Defense. I work for the Ministry of Culture. We don't have the same text in reference. And at the moment, we are trying to make the base, saying globally, the oldest documents, the Secret Défense label is not available. So let the people see the document. But if they are very young, we can discuss. And for my collection, it's really important because it's one of the youngest collection because it ends in 1977. And so it's less than 50 years. And 50 years usually is the delay to communicate some sensitive documents. So it's a question at the moment. And that's what I said on the last point, 10 to 20% won't be communicable, whereas if they are fragile or if it's legal protection time. So at the moment, this is what you will be able to find in this collection. So there are 7 parts. I just respected the first listing of the documents when they came back because I was trying to find the administrative organization. So the governor, the civil cabinet, the military cabinet, and so on. And since it's not yet on the website, I made prévisu, as we call it. It's a kind of visualizing a found, even if it's not yet on internet, which is a kind of effort for me because I'm not really, how can I say, used to this new logician. And so here is an example of what you will very, very soon find on the internet site. You have on the left part of the site, you have a list of the parts of the fund. And if you click on the left side, on the right, you have all the organization of the document. For example, to see those registres, I see they come from the Fonds des Gouverneurs. In the Fonds des Gouverneurs, it's in arrêté de décision, etc., etc. I take the opportunity to show it to you because it's our new website organization. So if you have to look inside our collection, this is what you will, an example of what you will find. So to end my presentation, I digitized some documents. It's a random choice because I don't have some masterpiece, but I have some subjects which are really interesting, I think, to know better the history of this territory. For example, all the work about the exploration of the territory and the research of water, which is a very huge problem because, as I told you earlier, it's an inferno. So really important subject. There are no shelf number at the moment because they are not the final number. So I will be able to communicate to you final number if someday you want to find those documents. So you have drawings, you have cards, you have lots of correspondence and reports. Very interesting documents too about the subject of managing people and budget. So this is interesting. I like, for example, the document on the right, which is confidential correspondence about secrets found. So I won't show you what is secret, but it's really funny. A big part of my fund has a label, secret défense, confidentiel, lots of documents, sometimes for very, very important subject, like this person will be there at this hour, this day. But at the moment, at the time, nobody was supposed to know this information, but like a century later, we don't understand why we still have the secret label. So we're working on it. And some very interesting documents. As I told you, the documents prior to the 1950s are really rare, and some of them are really damaged. So the next step for me will be to work with the Conservation Center and Restoration Center to see which document can be restored. Because at the moment, for example, this document, which is really often asked, which is a Journal de Poste, it's a kind of day-to-day journal on the territory of what was going on. And for example, what was going on with the tribes and the Sultan and the local population. So I think this is a very important research field. This document is really, really damaged, and it's quite to read it without damaging it more. So it's a reflection. And other documents about the defense of the territory, for example. This one is about demolition, or about the port. We also have a lot of documents about the train, because France created at the moment a very important train line between Djibouti and Addis Abeba, which was quite a major strategic way to reach between Asia and Middle East to Africa and then to Europe. So these are some extracts of the document. So thank you for your attention, and I'll be really glad to answer your questions. Thanks.
Une question, savoir, je ne saurais pas le dire en anglais, savoir si c'était plus des institutions qui faisaient appel à vos archives ou plus des particuliers.
Oui, alors je vais traduire votre question. So the question is there most institution or random citizen to ask us documents? On a les deux. We have both. Les institutions, on travaille beaucoup avec les ministères, avec d'autres centres d'archives, avec des centres de recherche. So we work with ministry, archive center, research centers, en France et à l'étranger, in France and abroad. Et pour les particuliers, on a, comme dans tous les centres d'archives, beaucoup de particuliers qui font leur histoire. Il faut savoir qu'on a une histoire française très liée à l'histoire coloniale. Donc, beaucoup de personnes ont des ancêtres qui ont vécu dans les territoires coloniaux. So I was saying, like, most of our readers, sorry, have ancestors, sorry, coming from the former colonies. So they're looking for their own history and genealogy. Et ensuite, on a beaucoup de professeurs, chercheurs universitaires et commissaires d'exposition aussi. So, universitarian and researcher and exhibition creator. Est-ce qu'il y a une autre question?
Colleagues online?
Ils ont disparu.
La vidéo tourne toujours?
Oui, j'ai l'impression, ça enregistre.
J'ai une question en fait. Est-ce qu'il y a l'idée de la mise en ligne de certains types de documents d'archives, donc graphiques ou rapports ou autres, parce que vous avez aussi, aussi en ligne sur le site internet des annonces.
Oui. So the question is, will there be some documents online shortly? Alors, pour l'instant, c'est pas prévu, dans le sens où il y avait surtout une urgence de mise à disposition de ce fonds, qui est bloqué quand même depuis plus de 30 ans, et il y avait une vraie demande des chercheurs d'y accéder, même si on faisait des accès ponctuels, mais voilà. Dans un second temps, je pense que ça va aller avec la réflexion que je vais entreprendre sur les documents anciens non communicables, parce que c'est souvent notre pratique aux ANOM. Quand les documents sont très fragiles, on en profite pour les restaurer, les numériser dans le même temps et ne plus les communiquer. So to translate shortly, at the moment there won't be any digitization project, but in a second time, for the most fragile documents, I think that some of them can be restored and digitized. Ensuite, il y a déjà effectivement des images liées au fond de la côte française des Somalies sur notre site internet, dans la base ULIS, qui est notre base iconographique, parce qu'en fait, pendant longtemps, quand des documents type carte, photo étaient trouvés dans les fonds, ils étaient automatiquement transférés, nous, au service de la cartothèque ou de l'iconothèque, et beaucoup ont été numérisés dans ce cadre. So some documents, you can already see them on the ULIS database on our website, which is an iconographic database. Oui?
It's nice to have some photos in your collection, some photographs.
Yes, as I told, some of them were extracted and put on the iconothèque, but the problem is by the time it was not always said that it was extracted. So it's really a pity for me, because I'm not sure if they come from other collection or if they come from the fund. And I found some photos, very few, but some of them. So what I just tried to do, because I don't describe everything, is just to mention it in the presentation of the document on the website. And if people want to know, they will have to come.
Thanks.
Do you welcome scholar groups?
Yes, I'm also in charge of the Action Culturelle service, cultural project. So it's a really young service, but since a couple of years, we welcome lots of students who want to visit. We organize with them a special day during the year when they meet archivists and responsible of the collection, and it's helping them to build a research subject, for example, for a master degree. And since 2 years, we also welcome how can I say, des écoliers, je trouve plus le mot, school, but student is like almost a superior teaching, anyway, schools. And the COVID just stopped our big project, but now it's coming back, and I think starting in September, we will welcome very often school groups. The project is to show them original documents. It's really important for us, because the digitized way just don't give the history and the emotion of being confronted to an original document. So the first project is to link them to original documents and to their history. The second project is to work on special educational themes, like colonization, obviously, but also the slavery, or for example, the what is the next one? The conservation of documents, and to make them meet some professional of conservation, restoration, research, to introduce them to this domain, because usually they don't know what it is, or they just imagine something old and dusty. And so we're trying to change this approach. Thanks to everybody.
So my name is Anna Schumann Douosson, and I'll be presenting the way that we foreground African publications at the African Studies Library Research Portal. A bit of background first. We are here based at the Frankfurt University Library in the African Studies collections. And in these African Studies collections, we've got the project Specialized Information Service for African Studies. And in that project, we're building the African Studies Library website, where we're hoping to make an integrated portal to make African Studies holdings at our collections, as well as others in Germany and beyond, searchable in one portal. So this specialized information service is funded by the German Research Foundation and is part of the Library and Information Science program, which also funds other specialized information services across a wide range of subjects and disciplines. So it's not something that's unique to African studies. We've got other specialized information services in political science or in anthropology and so on and so forth. So let me see if I can switch slides. Wait, this, yeah. So we too have this new portal, which is not yet online. So I'm also giving you screen grabs from our test portal. And we will be launching this month, next month, in the course of the summer, depending on how many more hiccups we're going to be facing before we can finally make it official. So the Specialized Information Service for African Studies is here at the University Library in Frankfurt since 2016. And exactly, we have other services as part of our Specialized Information Service that includes a toolbox on all matters surrounding research. We specialized especially on advocacy for open access, trying to make as much as material as possible accessible also on the African continent, which is complementary to what we're doing. It's complementary to what we're doing, trying to acquire a lot of published material from the African continent. So we're trying to have it as reciprocal as possible within, of course, the means of what we can do sitting here at one library in Germany. We have a news page with information from other African studies centers and institutes, associations. So the aim is in this portal to have a one-stop system, a one-stop place on research as well as information around African studies. So the Specialized Information Service for African Studies in general and the African Studies Library portal in particular strive to be part of a disobedient publishing ecosystem. And I'm quoting Divine Fu, who was giving a talk at the Huma Laspat Publishing Africa seminar series in June of last year, which I also sadly had to attend virtually, as I'm doing here. And the question he's addressing there is the problem of publishing and perishing, which Frances Namjo notes that many African scholars seeking to fill the academic requirement of publishing cannot but perish due to industry practice that give them a critical choice between sacrificing relevance for recognition or recognition for relevance. So what he's getting at, is, for example, that a lot of African studies research isn't getting heard, getting cited. And this is what my colleague mentioned also at the beginning of the pandemic, that he came across an article published as recent as 2018 on Kenya's middle class and Nairobi's urban cultures without a single reference to or from a Kenyan scholar. How does one deal with such epistemicide? And this is actually part of a larger problem, which has been analyzed by Briggs and Weathers. One of them is this mentioned citation gap. So it is known that work by Africa-based scholars is published less frequently in international academic journals than work by other academics. However, work by Africa-based scholars is also cited less than work by other academics. And this deficit is not due to differences in methods between Africa-based scholars and everyone else. So while the publication gap from Africa-based scholars shows that certain voices cannot be heard, the citation gap shows that certain voices do not command attention. So in this paper, I will introduce some of the key features and how they hope to foreground African research, especially research published by African publishers who are based on the continent in the African Studies Library. So this is a kind of two-pronged approach. For one, we have an acquisition policy of buying only publications of publishers located on the African continent and some by the African diaspora. And the second part is suggestions via knowledge graphs in our new African Studies Library portal. And I'll get into that in a minute. So our acquisition policy, as I just mentioned, is African publishers only. We buy books and ebooks, journals, e-journals, grey literature from African publishers. We work together, for example, with the African Books Collective, where we host a large ebook package. We also work together with the e-journals of Sabinet, based in South Africa. We are planning to harvest repositories of African universities via BASE. We work with different booksellers and distributors, and also with the Library of Congress Nairobi office. On top of that, I also plan to start acquisition trips. Now to the suggestions which we are trying to make in the African Studies Library portals, where we're also trying to foreground publishers from the African continent. So this idea came during the pandemic, where a lot of libraries were closed and you couldn't physically access them anymore. And so we thought that imagine you're visiting a library and you're looking for a book, a physical library now. And if you have some time off your hands, you can stroll along the shelves to look at other books. And the shelves are usually arranged somewhat based on what topics they contain. And so they form topical clusters. This is all of us working in libraries are well aware of that. And so the longer you stroll, the further it will take you away from what you're looking for in the beginning, but most likely you won't stray too far from your original topic of interest. And using a graph, a stroll like this could be replicated in software. So here you see a section from our knowledge graph, and the black dots represent records and the purple dots represent subjects. The knowledge graph relies on traveling on connections between subjects. Since a subject had at most 4 relations, this results in a small number of possible paths to stroll. And these are restricted by a maximum length and all start at a random subject of the current record on display. So since each path is equally valid, it seemed bad to have them ranked, and one path is then chosen at random. And I'll get into that in more detail and why that's important in a minute. The graph was then traversed along this randomly chosen path of subject, and each stop where a record was chosen via a random is subject of range. And this is repeated until at least 6 suggestions were taken to be displayed on the records page in the portal. So now I'll show you how this could work in practice. So imagine you're doing research on African drama and theater, and you came across this book on South African drama and theater from the pre-colonial times to the 1990s. You will find a serendipitous suggestions on the left, and it shows you other books that you might want to look at on this topic. Oh, sorry. Such as this one, Socio-Political Theatre in Nigeria. So you can click on that record and you can see another book on African theatre in general. So this book is published by an African author, but you can see it's published in the States. So going back to your original record that you started from, you can see what other records we have there. For example, this one on Zimbabwean drama. So let's have a look at that. And you can see that this is also published in Zimbabwe in the place called Gweru. Going back to our original records, you can have a look at another one. And you can see here we've got a book published in South Africa in the Pedi language. So it gives you an idea of the different kind of suggestions you get using this serendipitous suggestions. Now, let me have a last word on why we decided not to rank the path. Because in reality, the question would be, why would we even want to rank path of equal validity? Because if we were going to rank the path, we'd have to have a ranking system first. And even if all records had the same rank, sorting the path by their scores would result in some paths to be shown more often than others, favoring subjects with higher ranks. So a greater number of records attached to them. And this would then create a filter bubble where discourses and clusters with a lot of records get suggested more frequently, further reducing the visibility of publications that are already quite invisible in the first place. So now to return to Divine Fu's disobedient publishing ecosystem. It's in this manner that we hope to counter the perceived quote unquote obscurity, quoting Divine Fu here, of the continent's publishing outfits that worried many of the authors that he was in contact with. Authors were particularly worried about the fact that their publisher was located in a seemingly small African town disconnected from Euro-American knowledge institutions, the town, for example, such as Gweru in our examples, without the dissemination infrastructure or publishing ecosystem seen to be part of a global system. And so through our acquisition policy, as well as through our suggestion function, we hope to contribute to the increased visibility of publications from African publishers. So my slides were kind of doing their own thing. They skipped forward even before I was ready. So sorry if it's a bit asynchronous, what I was saying, but I hope you get the general gist. So let me stop sharing so we can see each other. Wait, there we are.
Thank you. Thank you.
And yeah, welcome for any questions. And my apology to Jos, who's already heard this, because we were on a similar panel a few weeks ago.
Maybe someone have questions in the room or in Zoom? Yeah, Elvire.
Hello.
Hi.
Could you
no.
a little bit more about this knowledge graph, this picture you showed, because I found it very difficult, hard to understand what this was exactly about.
Yeah, so the actual technical side of it is managed by our colleague, Yannick Jekyll, who I was quoting in the end. So it's part of a solar index, as far as I understand, but the actual real kind of technical nitty-gritty details I wouldn't be able to give you because
But I didn't even mean the technical details, but what we saw exactly. What do you see on this picture, this knowledge graph?
Basically, you had the different subjects and the way that you can travel between different subjects, kind of the relationship between them. So one is a subject of, kind of in the catalog hierarchy, basically. So that we try to link related subjects to give more suggestions, if you see what I mean. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So basically, when you have the kind of the keywords and the authority files attached to certain records, then you have clusters of what subject or what topic is this book on, and then we try to cluster the different topics and link them so that you can generate suggestions to that.
Yeah.
That's like as much as I can tell you. And then the important part was that there was a discussion among our colleagues who are working on the IT side of things, whether it would be good to have them ranked, because you have a lot of suggestions elsewhere, like when you do online shopping, where you get suggestions and they are actually ranked. So, you know, a lot of other people bought this and that, or a lot of people who are interested in this are also buying that. And we decided precisely not to have them ranked because we thought for academic books, you then kind of create a filter bubble that you don't want, especially when you want to foreground publications that are not well known, that are not well received. And that would be then a way to hope that when we make these publications from African publishers findable and accessible, that they will then also be cited and quoted, hopefully.
Thank you.
Ursula had quite the same question. Which knowledge platform, which knowledge graph platform do you use? So you said
we're working based on a solar index. I hope that answers your question. Yeah. And the other question online, if I could elaborate a bit. Yeah, sorry?
Yeah, as you have seen, we have a question from yours.
Yeah, exactly. If I could elaborate a bit on the exclusive buying of material from Africa in Frankfurt. So what we're doing here is we've got this, we've got the African Studies collection in Frankfurt, which is there also since a long time. And what we are doing here in this specific German research founded project, the Specialized Information Service for African Studies, is to focus only on African published materials. What we're doing here is that we're saying that this material is especially difficult to access and especially difficult to get because we're working with distributors. Like I said, we're doing acquisition tips. At the end of August, I'll be going to Ghana, to the Ghana International Book Fair, and working with distributors. Lots of material is actually hard to come by. And so we're thinking that we will bundle this expertise, which we have here in Frankfurt, to get this material that is not available elsewhere. Also, it's very expensive to bring stuff published in Africa over here, either with the distributors, with DHL, which costs a fortune, or even when you travel and have to buy an airline ticket. So we thought that this expertise and this funding will be used to get this material, which you can't easily get elsewhere, to make this knowledge and these debates accessible in the global north. And we're kind of relying on other African studies centers in Germany, such as in Leipzig, in Hamburg, the Excellence Cluster in Bayreuth, Cologne, Mainz, there are different ones, to then buy the stuff which is more easily accessible, the stuff that is published in the global north. And complementary to that, we do some advocacy work on open access, hoping to get more material published in the global north, open access available on the continent, but basically also anywhere else where you might be looking for it. So we're trying to have this two-pronged approach. But yeah, basically we're buying only stuff from Africa because we're kind of relying on other African studies centers to buy the other stuff. So through interlibrary loans, it means that all of this is basically available to circulate between the different libraries. And our stuff, which we got in Frankfurt, is also, of course, available via interlibrary loan. So if anyone finds something that's interesting, that's based in Frankfurt, very likely you can just order it to your library.
So I'm not a librarian myself, neither. I'm sorry. I'm like a managing editor. And I will talk about publishing in open access for African studies. So it's about publications. It's books and journals we are trying to make. So too many images. Just to try to understand from where I work, in fact. So there is like a diverse landscape for African studies or research about Africa in France, in the French country, with two main African studies research centers, which is Les Afriques dans le Monde and Institut des Mondes Africains, and other institutes and research centers which deals about research about Africa without being African Studies Center, strictly speaking. And there is one academic cluster, African Studies in France, very simply. And that's the big leg of the research about Africa in France. And there is a thin leg, which is the research institutes abroad, in fact, in Africa itself. And we call them UMIFRE. It's just basically French Research Institutes abroad, and branches in Africa for other institutes. So let's say one big leg in France and a thin leg in Africa. So I'm working for both, in fact. I'm working part from LAM in Bordeaux and part for the research institutes abroad. So yes, the French institutes abroad, there are 8 in Africa, and everyone have like different countries covered by their activities. And you see with the countries colored in the south of the Sahara, Africa, it's not very balanced. So the countries are mostly non-French speaking countries in Africa. And that's not by chance. That's a choice for settling these French institutes. So it's South Africa, Kenya, Ethiopia, Nigeria, Sudan. And these French institutes abroad are publishers, in fact. They're part of the mission to spread the science by the way of publishing journals like Les Cahiers d'Afrique de l'Est, the East African Reviews based in Kenya, Sources, which is quite new. It's per player online journal, all open access, and some working papers like Mambo, Ifra's blog in Kenya as well, which is an academic blog. And they were just confidential local print run in Kenya or in Nigeria or other countries, until we just put them online on well-structured platform for a good distribution. And there are books too, books with 3 books websites. So that's a different, there are book websites which has directly linked to a research center. For example, IFRA Nigeria, French Research Institute in Nigeria. The CFE, so the French Research Center in Ethiopia. And we have these other and newer website, which is called Africae. It's not linked directly to a French research center because it's like it covers multiple centers. For now, South Africa, Kenya, and Sudan. And about books, so we are publishing in full open access, and these 3 websites and the journals are well allowed to do full HTML open access. It's not only a PDF that can be downloaded freely. It's full HTML open access, and it's quite important for the visibility of this publication. We'll see that in a short while. So we are trying to publish books about Africa in open access, and we have to realize that there are very few Africa digital books published in France, and they are even lesser in open access. So it's true for journals, but it's more true for books. And I did a little research via Sudoc, which is like a meta browser in French libraries, about books on the subject Africa published in 2021. So there are about 450 references. So it's like a decent market. And there are only 12% of digital books among all the books. And among all the books, there are only 29 books in open access, so 6%. And among these 6%, there are only 13 new books. 16 are reissues, digital reissues of already existing books. And among these 29 books, almost everything is hosted by a platform which is called Open Edition, which is a public funded platform for open access books and journals. And almost every of these books are from public funded publishers. So there is quite an importance of public funded publishers in open access books in France. And I will put it briefly, why so little open access books? So I think you can understand there's like a tradition for French authors to publish for the most with private publishers and learned society in France, which did not do not propose open access, or abroad, which I call recognition publishers, publishers with decent rankings, mostly English-speaking and British publishers, which do open access only with costly fees, which we call BPC, book processing charges, who are quite costly, like 10,000 pounds, for example, or 8,000 to 10,000 pounds for British publishers. And so the French authors mostly don't afford these charges, don't pay. And however, there is a public funded network for open access that published not so many as you see. So on one hand, French-based public funded publishers like Sorbonne, Institut de Recherche pour le Development Research Institute, the Bordeaux Press University, just a few meters from here. And there are the French Research Institute abroad, UMIFRE, like Africa, CFE, IFRA Nigeria, or Centre Jacques Berg, which is important for Morocco. And that's the funny part. We do little in open access. Oh, first, a little about the UMIFRE, the French Research Institute abroad. They are not only in Africa, they are worldwide, so 27 worldwide, but a decent presence in Africa, Latin America as well. And there are some specificities compared to other publishers in France. First, we are working collaboration, direct collaboration with academic institutions on the region and regional publishers, often co-publishing with publishers in the country themselves. There is a policy of multilingualism. As I said, most of the research institutes are concerned with non-French speaking countries. So we are publishing in English, Portuguese, sometimes Arabic, and other languages. And very stronger mixed authorships than other French publishers, like Africa-based authors or America-based authors are published in the French Research Institute publication more than in France itself. And even if they publish not so many books per year, there are now approximately 800 books available on open access. Most are reissues because of they publish for a long time. So we have books who were published like in 1920s, no reissues till now. And so the funny part is that in open access, on a platform like Open Edition, we see a very huge visibility of the open access books about the South or the global South, let's say Africa and Latin America in this example. So they are comparatively much more viewed than the other books. In fact, I say viewed because it's HTML access. So I don't say downloads. I say viewed because the books are directly to be read online. So as you see, 85% of the first 20 most popular books concern Global South, Africa, or Latin America, or Middle East. And if you see the books in French or books in English, it's quite spectacular as well. Like half of the most consulted books in French are about Africa, and half the most consulted books in English are also about Africa. And more of the half of the most consulted books are published by the French Research Institute abroad and other institutes abroad as well. So it's quite spectacular, and it's quite unexpected that the books we made abroad are generally much more viewed than other books. And I show you some of the books, and you will see when I say most viewed books, like it's 180,000 views per year for the oral literature in Africa, or for books in French about Morocco, it's 170,000 views per year. And I didn't talk about Latin America, but the most popular books is from Mexico, and the views are like 400,000 per year. So it's quite astonishing. And it's, in fact, the same thing about journals. Most of the French language articles, so like 80% of the most viewed articles concern the South, and the most popular articles in English or in France are often about Africa. So it's not completely, how can I put that? When we do open access for books about Africa, it means something, in fact, as you know. So we are trying to do that from the French Research Institutes abroad. But it's not so easy because there are a small number of officers abroad, in fact, and there are technical obstacles to do open access books and journals. So we have different strategies. First, we can group the publication programs of several institutes. So that's why I told about Africa. That was the strategy, not only to do one website per institute, but to group the institutes to have like a more general editorial policy. And it's the same for the Sources Journal, which came from the partnership of 7 centers, including Les Afriques dans le Monde, but the 6 other are French research institutes abroad. And we have public resources on digital publication in France, so we don't pay for it. So it's the Open Edition platform, the Lodel software. Meetup, it's a tool system to publish in XML TEI and to allow to publish in structured way in HTML and other services. So that was the first point. The second point, and it's very important, I think, it's to have international partnerships in Africa, in the different countries. It can mean publishers like Wits University Press in South Africa, Mkuki na Nyota in Tanzania, other in Uganda or Kenya or Mozambique, and universities as well, like University of Ibadan, Addis Ababa, University of Nairobi, and so on. And what I mean by a partnership with a publisher is that we are making open access books, but we aren't destroying the print market, in fact. The agreement is we make open access books and we let the rights, the copyrights to the publisher to create print books. And the other way is they have interesting books, sometimes old, sometimes not so old, and we make an agreement to publish them online with co-publishing agreements. And I have to say that sometimes the partners in Africa are surprised. For example, my colleague in Wits University Press, when I come as a French in South Africa, we are not really serious. In fact, we are French, so we are not really professional, you know. We are not, our English is funny and so on. But I just show him open edition system, and it was amazed that we can publish in full HTML structured publications. And it was more amazed when I say to him that it is free. So maybe we are working on this to with Universitätsbibliothek to apply to the open edition platform, because he can really understand why it is important. And we have also a partnership in French in Europe to do partnership with publication, including Leiden. I can show you that if you don't know. And, and other partnerships with French publication, because we have a publisher of translations as well. So we have fun to translate French-speaking books to English-speaking and Portuguese-speaking books. So third aim is to apply to open science programs, to open science fundings, because there are some. For example, we are granted with the Open Science for African Studies, because the lines of this program was they wanted to fund multilingual projects and projects of monographs. So it's exactly what we need. So we have the fundings, and we can organize more easily the publishing service on several sites, as you know, in France and abroad, and funding translations to languages of the African countries, so English, Portuguese, Arabic, but also African languages as Amharic in Ethiopia or Swahili in East Africa. And the last but not least strategy is to build our proper identity. As I said, one interesting part of the identity is the mixed authorships, not just publish French authors who speak about Africa, but trying to publish African-based authors and researchers, and trying to develop like collective books, edited books, which can unite European and African researchers. We can reissue interesting works from the past that are difficult to access. That's also the goal of publishing in open access, I guess, and developing a scientific reputation, but not so much, in fact. As it was said, there are really important and serious obstacles for African-based colleagues to be published and cited in index like Web of Science and so on. So we are making publications that are fits with the project of publishing mixed projects with African colleagues and European colleagues. So the priority is the actual interest of research and material for the scientific collaboration and discussion, and not only make the books that will be the most cited and the most impact factor viewed of the books. And that's all. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Bastien.
Any questions in the room or in the Zoom? Oui, attends, je vais regarder. Donc pour l'instant, non. Peut-être que les collègues sont en train de taper. Peut-être que tu pourrais parler de la collaboration avec Leiden et Sophia avec une question.
Yes.
Yeah, only a short one. The views on your books that you mentioned, you cannot say from where they are, or you can only say how many views you have. Or
I forgot to say that. We can see the countries from where they came from, and it's really it's really clear when you publish about Kenya, you will have views from Kenya.
Yeah.
When you publish about Nigeria, you will have like thousands and thousands of views from Nigeria, and we can see the digital structures of each countries from the views you have. So Nigeria is it's very populated, yes. But there are a good network generally on internet. So we'll have a lot of views from Kenya as well, from South Africa, from Cameroon. So some countries are more difficult to be to have readers from, like Ethiopia or Sudan or Mali. But it's very clear, and you can see by comparison from site to site that you are published on Mexico. Mexico will see you publish about Colombia. That's not like by chance.
Et donc je disais peut-être que on peut peut-être montrer le.
Yes.
Oui.
Alors about Leiden and shortly. So the collaboration is that West African Politics and Society. It's a series published in partnership with African Studies Center Leiden and the French Institute for Research in Africa, IFRA, Nigeria. So that's on Leiden, and that's on IFRA, Nigeria. What was the series? 4 books. Yes. And here the books are open and readable in full open access. So it looks like that. So you can read online, and you can, I don't know why it doesn't work.
Because you have to subscribe for the premium.
No, normally no. No. Normally no. Normally no.
Il y a un problème de proxy, ça nous inverse les freemiums.
There is I think there's an error on the platform just today. So I see an error here. So sorry, it's not as spectacular as I expected. That's.
You mean normally you can download the PDF?
It depends on the books, and that's why I count the views and not the downloads, because in each case the books are readable online, and in some cases they are downloadable in PDF format, sometimes no.
Yeah. Because usually I use it online. I don't do notes.
Yes.
Tons of documents.
Because EPUB format.
Yes, EPUB format, which can be
la liseuse, par exemple.
Ouais.
Oui, bien sûr.
EPUB format, which can be downloaded or not. But the HTML, it's always, in the case of the African studies, every time readable completely online.
C'est financé par le ministère de la Recherche pour l'enseignement supérieur.
Open Edition?
Ouais.
Open Edition, yes, it's funded by the Ministry of Research in France. And yes, but on the top level, yes, on the top level is ministry. In fact, CNRS and some universities and Europe programs as well for like funding programs.
Les étudiants aujourd'hui, c'est juste.
Pas si mal, hein?
But these, I'm embarrassed to say, but I didn't know about this cooperation with the Mark Center, but I'm not of the publishing department.
Yes, it's a series of 4 books, so it's like a one shot. It's not.
And it was only once, or are there further?
I don't know. I'm not in charge of the dealing, but I don't know if they will continue after this program of several years and 4 books.
Very good.
Yeah. Oui, je crois.
You said nice cooperation with WAPOSO, and the books are downloaded very frequently from the Leiden repository. Violence in Nigeria 127 times in the last 3 months. Just to give an example.
I can just to say they are download and they are views, and it's not a competition. I want to say it's not a competition, but to just to put the interest of HTML version. Je peux pas y aller. Ah, sorry. I cannot access. Oh no, there is a problem. Yes, but when I say HTML views, it's not always clear that people are actually reading the books or just like opening the page and opening another page after that. But still, we can see like tens of thousands of views. That can be said if we are reasonable. That maybe if just 2% of the people are reading the books, still it's thousands of 2,000, you know. And what is interesting, the comparison between the other sites and not the number of views itself, which is not so meaningful, in fact.
There are different types of lecture online. You can just search on the HTML page, and it's a view. So it's a sort of lecture of a book. You just watch as a summary, for example. So it counts too.
And you can use it as a catalog, yes. Or I know this book exists. I won't read it for now, but I know it exists.
One second. Anne said, thank you very much. That is very interesting and very relevant to the open access advocacy we try to do at the African Studies Library in Frankfurt. I'll try to get in touch in due course.
Okay.
So at the end of the day, or well, a few days later, we will put on the ELIAS website all the presentations, maybe contact, or you just ask me email contact, because it's not very RGPD, I don't know how to say it in English, but I won't put emails, direct emails in ELIAS website, but you just have to ask me and I get you in touch.
Yeah, I just start. I just would give you a short overview of what we are, of our efforts in Leiden to ensure access to our online, to our not yet online film collection, but in a time where students are really used to watch film online, and almost everybody in this Netflix age, we think we should do something about our collection, which is still on DVD. So I would like to first give you a short few keywords on our collection, and then I would like to tell you about a working group, the project idea we submitted, and I would discuss some questions concerning rights, and then I would like to tell you where we are now. So our collection, we have more than 2,200 films now on DVD. And these films are from different provenances. They are from our researchers, some of them. They are older anthropological films. We also have a lot of films from the former Africa in the Picture Festival, which used to be held in Amsterdam, and we have their archive. And we also have a regular acquisition. We buy documentaries and feature films, mostly from African filmmakers. And all the metadata, the title, author, abstracts are in the catalog, and also a trailer if possible. But most of the DVDs can be borrowed, but not all, because yeah, that's a question of rights, or we don't know how to replace them if they got lost. So that's the reason. And why did we start this working group now? Most, as I told you, students don't use DVDs anymore. They don't have the equipment to play DVDs. And also in this time, online access to resources is more important since COVID-19, when teaching and learning had to be done outside the physical library or the classroom. And in my experience, films are often sold now as an electronic file. If I want to buy a film, often there's no DVD, and they sent it to me as a file. And now I have to put them on DVD. People do that for us in the university. And then because we only can lend DVDs, and there is no structure yet to lend an electronic file, but we want to change that. And another last point is the conservation of the DVDs, because DVDs don't have life forever. And yeah, we think in the future we have to store the films otherwise. So we started a working group film management, together with subject librarians and information specialists, and the head of the digital services of the main library, and also a copyright expert and public services representant. And we do that with fellow subject librarians who are working at the Leiden University libraries and who have audiovisual material in their collections. They notably the Cultural Anthropology Department and the Asian Studies Department and the Film Studies Department of Leiden University. They also have DVDs in their collection. And we need them because we use the same library catalog. And for any changes, we need this library people. What did we do in the group? We had to submit a project idea, and this idea had to be submitted to the management team of the university libraries, and in this project idea we had to formulate the general idea, that is to store and manage and offer digital content streaming within the secured environment of the Leiden University Catalog. And we also had to state the target audience, the motive, which parties we think are involved, and the time and finance needed. And we found it rather difficult to do this because to make a reasonable estimation of all these factors was, we didn't have any, how do you call it? And we didn't know any other people who did this, so we had to find out ourselves. But we think we don't even know the exact number of DVDs that are in the Leiden University in all the libraries. We think it might be about 7,000, something like that. So we proposed to start a pilot with 100 DVDs, which could be ripped without copyright problems and would be selected by the subject librarians. And we also proposed 2 possible platforms to realize this idea, because the university already uses an intern video portal called Kaltura, where university staff can store and make available audiovisual material. And the other platform, Alma Digital, is part of the library system we are working with, but this part is new and its possibilities are now being investigated by staff from the main library. And issues that have to be examined are, for instance, the format needed for conservation of the electronic file, because now, for instance, I often get films on an MP4, which is a format, but maybe this is not the right format to really store film for a longer period. And there have to be people, the ICT people of the main library, who should look into this. Yes, and then also, how should we lending? How should we realize that letting only one person at a given time watch a film, which is the same as analog to the situation now, when you can only lend a DVD to one person at a time, and this is called controlled digital lending. But you could also let everybody at the same time watch the film. So this is all things that have to be still worked out. Then I would like to tell you something about the rights questions we are facing, because all our films are from different provenances and there are different rights concerned. And the rights of the older collection are not clear. They've never been registered. They've never been listed somewhere. Nobody knows exactly what can be done with them. And we now know that most DVDs can be put in digital format, but then they cannot be lent without permission of the copyright holder. But with new acquisitions, we now prefer an electronic file with a digital site license. And there are different terms for this: public performance rights, educational rights, institutional rights. And this means that all these rights, when you buy a film, they have to be managed and they have to be listed somewhere and stored so that everybody knows with which film you can do what. And this is really new, and there has to be also made some structure for this. And another thing I would like to say is that the cost of films with an official digital site license is much higher than just buying a film from Amazon and a DVD. Really, something else. Well, and where we are now, this project idea is finally, it really took a very long time, but it's now finally approved by the management team. And what we now have to do is to prepare a project letter, with help of the innovation and projects departments of this main library. And this might also take some time. And what we are doing in the meantime is gathering support from lecturers. We already have written support from a lot of lecturers and students to get this project high on the agenda, because there are other projects waiting, and we would like to, of course, start with something. Yeah. So and another thing we're doing is to now identify DVDs for this pilot we are envisaging. So we start to identify, look for 100 DVDs without copyright problems. For instance, the DVDs made by our own researchers or gifts from people who made these films. Well, that's it. I hope you will have something to say on this. And yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Can you please
How do
point
how do
four,
I
I
do?
believe?
Point 4? What do you mean?
Questions about rights, I guess.
Yes, about rights.
Slide 6.
Even kijken. Here, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm very curious to know if you are also having, some of you are having DVDs in your collection, and what are your ideas about the use of these films and how we could make these films, attractive for the future and usable.
Yeah, thank you, Elvire. It's really interesting because we have the same problem, and I think, as you say, this digital platform, it would be good for the films we are buying starting from now.
Yeah.
And as you say, what we also recognize is, of course, that has always been the case. If you buy a library license, that is always more costly, and for some films, I don't even know how to get it, because we were really purchasing many films via Amazon. And so you don't have a license, actually a library license. And do you have any solution for such kind of films that were purchased in the past, but also that will be purchased in future? I mean, if you buy films via Amazon, is there any way to get a library license?
Well, now we used to buy, I think, more films with Amazon, but now we don't do that anymore as much, mostly because maybe they aren't with the films I would like to buy, they aren't sold by Amazon. Because, and I think, indeed, if you buy films from Amazon, we used to think, because it's in an educational setting, we can use them, we can lend them to our students, but we cannot put them on a digital format and then lend them. We know that's not possible. So for the older collection, there's no real solution. But now I mostly, when I would like to buy a film, I look on the internet who has the rights, and who, it's very time consuming often, and then I send mails to the production companies or the distribution company or to the filmmaker himself or herself to ask for a copy with rights, and they have to then agree and send me in writing that they agree, so that I can verify it and put then this affirmation and you can use the film in an educational setting. I then put this now temporarily on our own server. I just have a list of licenses and mails from people, but of course there should be another more professional way to do this.
And do you already have some experience with some institutions like the Royal Anthropological Institute, for example? They are selling a lot of movies on Africa. ethnographic movies. You have any experience with such institutions?
Not with the Royal Anthropological Institute, but well, with some French. Now that's mostly distribution companies, and with an institute in Germany, Arsenal. I think they're in Berlin. They, I know, negotiated with them so that we could use films. They restored older films from Sudan, and we got the files with the permission to put them eventually, because we don't have now the structure yet. But if this will happen in the near future, then we can use those films. Yeah, but it's now all the time negotiating for each film separately. So it's
And it's actually not possible for our old collections.
No. Yeah. I think something came up.
Could you please stop to the sharing?
Shall I go into sit here? Maybe you could.
In France, we have a society who provides DVD with the rights. It's named ADAV, ADAV.
Yeah.
But as you said, it's really costly, and and their catalog is quite mainstream.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they can provide abroad.
No. Yeah.
And I don't know if they provide something else than DVDs, actual DVDs and material.
Yeah.
I don't know how they manage to do it, but for example, in Marseille, which is quite a very bad city in terms of organization, but in Marseille, if you are a reader of the municipal library, you have also access to digitize the content and to films, and especially old movies or not mainstream, because the aim is really to educate people to cinema with the big C, or I don't know. So I don't know how they can do it, but they do it. But the restriction is that only the readers which are inscribed at the library can access to this. So is it their collection that they put, the old collection of DVD that they put online, or is it another catalog? I don't know.
No, it's provided by a provider like Arte or somebody else. I don't have the name of this le kiosque KIOSK provides something, I guess. La Philharmonie, so the musical society from
These
Paris.
are public institutions that will provide part of the catalog.
Yeah, but it's not free.
No, I don't say free. It's just I don't know how it works. I know some people who just pay euros for a year to the library, and also they have numeric content.
With the university, as students, we have.
You have it also at the universities. You also have. Tu as aussi ce genre de système à l'université.
Un abonnement.
Avec ta carte étudiante.
Oui, en fait, depuis le site, en fait, on a accès à plein de ressources numériques auxquelles souscrivent les universités.
Ça dans les écoles.
Et en fait, du coup, on a accès à plein de catalogues. Bon, le problème, c'est qu'ils ne disent pas qu'on y a accès, mais on a accès notamment à des films étrangers. Et c'est vrai que c'est hyper intéressant d'avoir, par thématique, par exemple, là, ils nous ont proposé, enfin, on a entendu parler, des films russes. Des films en russe ou ukraine et tout, et du coup, c'est intéressant.
Mais ça fait partie d'une base de données.
En fait, ils souscrivent à des plateformes extérieures, mais ce n'est pas directement proposé par l'université. Donc, en fait, l'université n'a pas d'influence sur ce que propose le catalogue. En fait, ils sont dépendants du catalogue extérieur.
Whereas in your case, the aim is to promote your own collection.
Yes. Yeah. That's true.
Je pense que ça coûterait trop cher d'avoir leur propre catalogue.
Plus l'infrastructure.
Yeah.
Oui, c'est ça, parce que la plateforme est planifiée.
Yes, but when this project is approved further, so when this project letter, which should just put more in detail what should be done, when it is approved, then the funds will come. Is the idea? Well, our own African Studies Center will have to provide funds, but they are willing to do so, and also the other departments, for instance, cultural anthropology and film studies, who I mentioned, they all have to,
because at the moment,
participate.
At the moment, how does it work? People, only people who are inscribed
Yeah.
in your your DVD library
Yeah.
come and can borrow the DVD.
They can borrow, and but that's at our African Studies Center. They can borrow the DVDs, but then at the main library they cannot. They can only watch the film sur place. So that's also different, not the same. But we've also always let people borrow the films. Yeah.
Okay.
And so we would like to have the same situation, but then online, because Sophia also experienced, less students come now to borrow the DVDs.
Really
because they
students,
really, well, we have some, but not they that are really the ones who are very, very interested. But most students only use the databases that are proposed by the library, like ethnographic video online. DocuSeek is also a very big platform with also African films. But and they are used; those platforms are used a lot. So there is interest in film, only not in DVDs, and that's such a pity.
It's not the content, but it's the support of
the
problem.
Yeah, that's the problem. Yeah, and it's such a pity, because it's really a part of African heritage that we are now, that we have, but there are no people who are able to see this and to watch this and to write about it, and that's really
And it has always been expensive. Talking about costs, I mean, even to purchase films as DVDs, it has been very expensive. And now we have these expensive films, and nobody's funding them anymore.
Yes, that's really a pity. And we have this great archive from this festival I mentioned, which really was a great festival. It's a pity it ended in 2013, but it was from 1987 onwards, and really there were great, it was all about African filmmakers, so it was really from Africans who came to Amsterdam and showed their films, and a lot of them are in our collection now, but we can't do much with it. People can watch it on DVD. We have put everything on DVD. They can watch it at our library, because a lot of those films cannot be borrowed because of the rights. We don't have the rights to do that, but
Another question about archival materials.
Yes.
Scholar materials, scholar archives. In Leiden, you've got some, I think. And do you have inside in those funds? Do you have film material?
I don't, not really. No. Well, sometimes photos and maps, but no film. I think no. Not yet. Maybe that's